Alright, we're back with the plantings of the fruit trees. The main productive part of the swale is the fruit trees. The whole swale system is in place to make the fruit trees productive. Everything else that's added to the swales, everything about the swale is there to make the fruit tree productive. Or any tree that you might want to establish on a swale, but generally speaking, they're mainly used for food growing systems. So now that the plants are in, I'm going to take you through how I plant them out in the swale that we've constructed. So step one is really just we had flattened off that area on top of the swale, so we were working on a flat area. That was important for this reason, is that it gives you enough room to create a bowl. This bowl's really important in establishing the early growth of the tree, because the swale system is for when the system matures. So the watering capabilities of the swale aren't going to be really seen in the short term. They will be definitely demonstrated, as you can see down there, in the long term. They give you a much more robust long-term water capacity in the soils and the subsoils. They don't really do any surface watering. They're building up subsoil and underground moisture. They're conditioning those underground soils. They're allowing biology to migrate into those soils and establish in those soils. So it's the swale system isn't going to just set and forget. You're going to have to get your trees established until the swale system takes over after maturity is reached. So that depression and that flat area there is so important, because it's going to allow you that when you water, you're going to get a large surface area of water soaking down to build your fibrous roots, and then your plant can establish its more structural roots lower down into the swale and into the subsoil. So I just dig out a depression like a crater, and then I dig another crater a little bit deeper for the pot plant, for the pot size of the plant. You'll see there I leave about 2 or 3 inches above, and that is so that I can put a compost layer on top here. So once I've got the depression in, I'll make the space for the pot, and it's very important that root stock of the pot is not, you don't disturb it. You know, nurseries go to a great deal of trouble to get a good healthy root system. There's absolutely no need to disturb those roots as soon as you get it out of the pot, because anything you do to them is going to break them and disturb them. So they're perfectly fine left alone. You just pull the pot off. Hopefully the roots are all bound up against the edge of the pot. That's actually a good sign, not a bad sign, because it means you've got a healthy root system. And as soon as those roots feel the moisture and the soil up against them, they're going to go straight into it. Whereas if you break them up and tease them up, you're going to lose some of the quality and some of the amount of healthy roots you had. So just pop it straight out of the pot, pop it in the hole, and it's important that 2/3 to 3/4 of that pot is in the original soil. we only want to fertilise from above. We don't want to fertilise from below. So that's why we leave about 2 inches here, and then you've got enough material there to feed the surface area here, and as you water, that will penetrate down. So once we've got the plant in, then we can go, and I just sprinkle a little bit of those fines, that fertilizer. It's just a composted composted and granulated, probably chicken manure or something like that, with some mineral dust added and a few other things added. It's an organic one. I sprinkle that on. Again, the fines does work better on swales, because in the earlier film I did with where I fertilized under the mulch here, the fines will actually hold better on the banks, on the slopes here. So whereas the pellets will tend to roll off. So fines do work really good in this instance. So once your plant's in, I'll dress it with just a thin layer of that slow release composted fines, and then after that's applied, then I'll come in and I'll put a good layer of compost on. In this instance, my compost isn't ready, but home compost that's built on a lot of wood chips and sawdust is really ideal for plants. Whereas I didn't have any ready, so I've got just a mushroom compost, which isn't as good a feed for plants, because plants are always best fed with woody material, whereas mushroom compost is mainly made on straws and hay and stuff like that. But it still works. The main thing it's here to do is hold the moisture anyway. It's not so much here to fertilize. We've put the fertilizer on for that. This is just here because it's really good material for holding moisture. So it's going to keep the moisture content in the soil around that plant while it's young very stable and insulated. Now, that's basically your plant finished there. You're good to go. I will come back in the next couple of days and probably dress it with some wood chip or some forest mulch. Forest mulch is better than wood chip. Wood chip is good long term, but it takes a lot longer to decompose, and it doesn't feed the tree as well as forest mulch. Forest mulch includes the woody branches and the leafage as well. Those fine twiggy branches are very important for fungal development because they have the high content of lignin in them. So anything that's got a whole broad range of the tree in it for the mulch is much better than just the wood chip. So try and get your hands on a forested mulch, which is all inclusive. So we can come back. We can dress these with the forest mulch, and I'll just demonstrate here. For each tree there, I used a 20-litre bucket of compost. That seems to be ample. And then I'll just demonstrate the obvious here, that when we water now, we get we don't get any runoff. Okay, just sinks straight in. And over the next few months, this is all we'll need to do. It's just every few days to a week, give this a good drenching, and that'll provide the plant with all the moisture, nutrient everything it needs while they establish, and then the swale system will take over in the long run. Alright, I'll just empty this water can onto this plant, and that should see us done for swales on steep slopes. One thing I will mention too, just before I go, is that there is a fine layer of compost just above the original ground of where the surface of the pot was. So that's the surface of the pot. You want to have as little material up against that stem there as possible. You don't want to mound this up. You want to keep the bulk of the material comes away to the exterior of the bowl, so it's like a wedge. You've got a thin layer here, and the further out you go, the thicker it gets. Very important to keep any composting matter away from the stem of that plant, because you don't want to get any rot. You want lots of air and lots of ventilation around that area there. More so while the plants are young, less problematic as they get older and more woody. But in the early years, it's always good practice to keep the material away from that juvenile stem.